Hello all, and welcome to the review of the Clash of the Titans report for 2020. Appreciate everybody joining today. My name is Chris DeVault, and I am Director of Industry Relations here at Panorama Consulting Group. We have a special offer for everybody joining today. Please hit our website, and for the first few respondents there, we're going to give an hour of free consulting away. Good opportunity to talk to some experts in the industry and take advantage of some free time. As we're going over the report today, we're going to go over a brief introduction of who Panorama Consulting Group is, talk about the purpose of the webinar, we'll talk about the findings from the research and the surveys, and then if there's any questions, we'll take those. From a Panorama Consulting Group standpoint, we have full management consulting. You can see here on the left-hand side is a snapshot of all of our service streams, starting with digital strategy. Our bread and butter has always been software selection and change management. We also do expert witness projects. And we also do all sorts of restructuring, operational, organizational restructuring. We play in many different industries. We have a focus historically on manufacturing, distribution, and professional services. We've always had a good government and nonprofit division as well. We do a good amount with healthcare, medical supplies. We're seeing more retail now as manufacturers and distributors are trying to become more business to end consumer. And we work in energy, agriculture, and also food and beverage industries, also from a manufacturing and distribution standpoint there. We have a global base of consultants, a lot of industry experience. We try to pull as many resources as we can from the private side and or people that have worked with vendors that we commonly see. Got many people in different areas, certified in different areas, including supply chain management. We have our own certification internally as well, really making sure that all of our team members, all of our clients experience the same process and projects independent of the team members that they have. There's a quick snapshot of some of the groups that we work with. Panorama works with companies that are $20 billion plus. We also work with companies all the way down to the startup level. This different experience gives us great exposure to best practices and standardizations and also organizational structures from small groups up through very large enterprises. This is a snapshot of some of the ERP systems that we work with. You can see these systems range from Tier 1 down to Tier 3. Some of these systems are also niche and very specific, such as maybe an Ultimate Software, a Kronos for workforce management, HCM. We work with groups like JDA in Manhattan that are supply chain applications that usually augment some of the shortcomings of any of these ERP systems. So we'll briefly touch on the purpose of today's webinar. We're providing an independent objective comparison of these Tier 1 vendors. We're focusing on SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, and INFOR today. Trying to give our participants the ability to better understand their strengths, weaknesses, trade-offs, and really some considerations as you start to evaluate or possibly think about evaluating a new ERP. We're going to analyze the SAP, Oracle, and INFOR customer selection and implementation decisions, as well as some of their projects results. Trying to provide as I mentioned before, we're trying to provide realistic expectations for companies who are about to embark on this journey. I think it's certainly beneficial to learn the lessons from these big vendors for any type of Tier 2 or Tier 3 type of project as well. Smaller organizations certainly benefit from these results. I'm going to jump into the key findings here. So we do all survey-based from our website, and responses were collected, that you can see in the time frame here, at the end of 2018 through 2019. It included 134 business professionals that have selected or implemented SAP, Oracle, and Microsoft, and or INFOR. And this does include organizations of all sizes. So we have large enterprises that have selected these applications. We also have smaller groups, maybe in the tier 2 realm, that have selected a different product or that are having projects that may be related to another set of products, such as Enterprise Asset Management or HCM for many of these groups as well. A brief overview here, and I think you'll get a lot of this from some of the statements that we make and the results of the survey here. But SAP continues to innovate and evolve, especially in this competitive market. SAP certainly geared for large enterprises, but with the new S/4HANA, fairly new S/4HANA, they are developing more out-of-the-box processes, which we believe allows customers, not traditionally as big as SAP would want, to get onto their system. We look at Oracle, and obviously a strong focus on the cloud technology from Oracle. They have a large focus on the customer experience as well. So really a data-driven model from Oracle and what they do with the data on the back end. And then Oracle's applications here are including the NetSuite application, the Oracle Cloud apps, and then any ancillary projects such as advanced demand planning or some of the HCM applications that they have. So Microsoft is still evolving in their transition to their cloud. We'll talk a little bit about where D365 F&O, the old AX, and D365 Business Central are at currently. And I think that some of the interesting information comes through dealing with from the Microsoft respondents as well. And they certainly have a good balance focusing on both the legacy and more modern technologies there. Many of INFOR's offerings are cloud-based, such as their Enterprise Asset Management, their HCM. They've got obviously a cloud suite of products that are focused on manufacturing and distribution. They have a handful of products for enterprises and then also tier 2 organizations as well. So we'll be talking about those. I'm going to jump now into a closer look at each of those and really what we see the data from the respondents. So from SAP suite of solutions, most customers are using a best-of-breed strategy. That was one common theme that came out. And then most of the customers are focusing on MES functionality. So this is interesting here because SAP really is very complex, very in-depth, very functional, highly technical product leading in technology, but the nature of these projects are very large, and that does lead some organizations to start to go down the best-of-breed path as they're implementing. So we do often see SAP implemented as the strong back-end financials. We obviously see SAP evaluated for what they can do in other areas. And then companies are kind of picking and choosing, where to really spend their money. If they don't have a whole bunch of complexity in operations or logistics, they may be getting another SAP product or a third-party product to help those niche applications, but certainly still having SAP on the back end. And then you can see here the MES functionality. There's a large portion of the customers, SAP customers this year, that are really looking to integrate their manufacturing information. So data from the shop floor, data from machines, and really increasing the automation and workflow of data and processes throughout ERP systems. From an Oracle standpoint, we see most of the customers are focusing on CRM functionality. This certainly makes sense in the marketplace. As I had mentioned earlier, Oracle has a large focus on the customer experience, and the numerous data points that Oracle has on their customers and in the market space really gives them the ability to focus on customer relationship management, focus on the customer experience. So from a vendor standpoint, they have invested heavily in that from resources and technology within Oracle. And then you can see that's obviously trickled down into the market with the projects that we're seeing. It was interesting to see that the most expensive ERP projects from the time frame this year were related to Oracle. So we believe that there's more of a large influx of larger organizations and enterprises that are implementing Oracle. Oracle continues to mature in the cloud and are continuing to develop the Oracle Cloud application. So certainly getting much more mature, and then we do see more larger groups, larger enterprises adopting the Oracle Cloud applications. Some highlights of the Microsoft suite of solutions. So here again we have Microsoft D365 Finance and Operations, which is the old AX. We also have Dynamics 365 Business Central, which is the old Navision. Most customers are pursuing business transformation through the Microsoft arena. So business transformation really is entering new streams, new revenue streams, entering new markets. A lot of these groups are mid-size and they're already on a Microsoft platform one way or another. So the technology is a little bit more familiar with them and they feel comfortable continuing the relationships with Microsoft in order to help them go through some business transformation. We saw the most of the customers here focusing from Microsoft focusing on e-commerce functionality. So again, here we've certainly seen a trend of manufacturers trying to sell more direct to their end customers, trying to cut out some wholesalers. We also see the capability of the e-commerce side from Microsoft growing as a whole, with their shopping cart capability, the platform capability, the technology of development, and also some of their point of sale as well. We see here from Microsoft customers using a high percentage of external resources. So this does go back to kind of the complexity of these applications, somewhat of the maturity as well. Microsoft has a heavy reliance on the partner channel, their partner channel, to implement really the last mile of functionality. And I think this is where we're seeing the higher percentage of external resources. Groups like Panorama are often involved in these implementations as a third-party set of eyes to make sure the project is going well from the channel partner and the Microsoft side, and then you mix in the client. They're obviously important to have very strong project management and organizational change management as well. From a change management perspective, as companies are going through their business transformation, it does make sense for groups to hire out external resources to help guide them through, whether it be training, readiness assessments, just the daily change that these end users are going to see. So that does explain quite a bit there. And then the least expensive ERP projects and the shortest project duration. So this was interesting, kind of a change from last year's Clash of the Titan report. We believe that there was more of an increase of the Business Central, which is the old Navision. Typically those are shorter projects, with less complexity. And then the pricing from Dynamics AX F&O, 365 F&O, excuse me, is very aggressive and very attractive. So customers and clients of Microsoft are able to purchase the software and use the software from a SaaS model at a lower rate than most of the vendors. But it does still take some, a lot of configuration depending on the application on the back end. So I think those are some of the things that are leading to the comments from Microsoft. Now we talk about INFOR's set of solutions here. And most customers using a single ERP strategy from INFOR. Again, a lot of our clients and in the marketplace, they are evaluating these new ERP systems, and they're evaluating vendors in a way to how do they complete and how do they address our current state, our current and possible future state, within a couple years. How are they addressing those requirements? And then as a big picture, as these organizations grow, how are they addressing from an all end-to-end standpoint from one vendor? So again, INFOR here has multiple ERP systems. They have enterprise asset management. They have full HCM capability and product set there. So a lot of these customers, again, are evaluating the vendor on the bigger picture, and then they're starting to pick and choose what applications may be implemented first in a phase 1 or 2 that are going to bring the most benefit, or could be the lowest risk as well. INFOR has the fewest customers pursuing the business transformation. As INFOR is growing, there really has been a large influx of enterprise groups that INFOR has taken on, large organizations and enterprise adopting the software. And those groups, usually are optimizing their businesses, they're optimizing their processes. Most of them are really not looking for true transformation, meaning going in, reaching out to and developing new revenue streams, entering brand new markets. So that's why we see this, fewer INFOR customers pursuing the business transformation. It's more around optimization. Most of the INFOR customers that have responded to this are focusing on EAM functionality, which is the enterprise asset management functionality. INFOR has got an excellent application that plays very well in the enterprise, large organizations, and offers a lot of value with the maintenance management and the resource management within the application itself. And then the INFOR customer is using a high percentage of internal resources. So I think, again, this goes back to larger enterprises adopting more of the INFOR application. This leads us to our, that last bullet point there, longest project durations from INFOR this year, which was actually opposite of what we saw, a year and the last 2 years in our findings. Again, I think it's the influx of larger enterprises looking to adopt the functionality of INFOR, and therefore they're just more complex by nature. These groups also tend to have very stable and large IT internal resources, along with their subject matter experts and their functional leads. So they're trying to take on more of that because they have the infrastructure and the resources already set there. So I want to talk about some of the key considerations when evaluating these ERP vendors, or any ERP vendor in general. Obviously, you need to look at the software functionality. How does it meet with current state requirements? Most of the organizations that we're working with really have a true focus on what the future state is. We've, every day we see more of the ability for companies, more of the desire to adopt best practices, standard practices, trying to leverage out-of-the-box functionality, really in order to reduce the risk and the duration of those implementations. It's very critical to figure out what the deployment options are. Each of these groups still have a kind of a hybrid model, so a pure software as a service, multi-tenant model, and then it goes down to software as a service, single-tenant model. They have still the old perpetual license, the on-prem versions that can be hosted either by a partner or one of their data centers, or it could be hosted within an organization's four walls. We certainly don't see groups, buying the perpetual license and hosting themselves, but we still see a lot of perpetual license purchases that are hosted in a data center. Gives a little bit more flexibility in management of the application in some instances to our clients. And then the vendor and product viability. It's very important to understand where the vendor has been and where they're going. these four big the vendors are, they're not going to be acquired by any other group. They may have some change in vision of where they're going. They'll probably continue to consolidate their products offerings. So it's very important to understand where the product has come from, how it's gotten to the cloud, what technology are they using to enhance and develop the software, and then to make sure that product that you're looking at has a viable roadmap. Make sure that the research and development roadmap is there, and obviously the support roadmap will follow that. We always say an informed decision requires business process mapping and defining the requirements, whether it be from a current state, if you really are just kind of trying to rip and replace. Some of our clients are in a situation where some of their applications are being sunset and no longer supported. They know that they really can't take on much more of business process. They make it a technology project. And then a majority of our clients are looking more future state, and they are trying to take on those business process management optimization opportunities. The larger the group, the more difficult it is to change. We have very large clients, $5 billion plus, that they recognize that they're going to get ROI from some of these process changes, but they can only take on an actual, a certain percentage of those process changes, simply because the organizations are so big, multiple locations, documentation and training for the new processes and these end users is always difficult. So a lot of those organizations are looking to optimize and improve, but they know that they cannot bite off everything in one chunk. So we certainly see multiple phases of implementation and improvement. And then it's critical to establish an overall digital strategy and identify where ERP fits into the puzzle. So looking at the vision of the company, looking at the growth, what is a lot of our companies, are small to mid-size, and ultimately they want to be purchased by somebody. So what does that mean when you're looking at ERP systems? We always find that a very viable, modern-day, well-implemented ERP system certainly adds value to an organization, but it may not fit in everybody's strategy there. So it's important to establish that strategy and look at the 3, 5-year, 7-year, and 10-year vision of the company, and understanding where technology could come into play. From an implementation duration standpoint, we talked a little bit about this, but INFOR implementation is going to get a little bit more detail here on each of these. They took the longest amount of time. 28 months here was the kind of the average time from the respondents here. So again, we think that's because of it's a large influx of enterprise level clients that INFOR has seen. They are also implementing multiple projects, or products. So they may be implementing ERP. They may be implementing HCM, human capital management, in parallel. They may be implementing enterprise asset management. So we think that, in combination, that's what's really driving those longer durations of implementations there. We certainly see the INFOR products being deployed in much less time than that, especially at the Tier 2 realm. From the Microsoft standpoint, we've got the shortest amount of time. On average, it's taking 8 months. So I think there's a handful of things that go into here. One is the Microsoft channel partners from the D365 F&O, the enterprise large organization application, the old AX. Their channel partners have certainly caught up with the new development of what their IP is. What had happened was Microsoft rewrote the application in Azure, and it was completely new technology, and the channel partners had to rewrite a lot of their extensions, their product IP applications, and they've really caught up to where Microsoft now is there. And then the channel partners are expanding their client base with more pre-configured functionality. So once those vendors, either from a D365 and now F&O, and now what the old Navision D365 Business Central is going through, their partners are offering more out-of-the-box, more predefined processes that groups are able to take on. I think the smaller the organization, the higher the chance that groups are able to adopt, out-of-the-box functionality. The larger you get, the more difficult it could become to develop or to adopt all those pre-configurations and whatnot. A few more factors contributing to this duration is the implementation accelerators. So there are a lot of industry niche applications out there, either developed by partners or the vendor themselves, that over the last few years, as everybody has kind of redone the cloud technology, they able to take advantage of more of the out of the box. There's a lot of different offerings and predefined processes depending on which vendor you get. And then the standardization there across all entities and location. Again, this is a big focus from our companies, whether they're all North American based or they have a global footprint there. Groups are trying to standardize what does the chart of accounts look like, what does the business intelligence look like that that is really needed at these locations, trying to optimize supply chains, trying to standardize supply chains, and trying to get the same methodology for let's say purchase requisitions and the purchase process really across the board. So that does eventually bring down the implementation duration, but it does take a lot of change on the front end, really, as you're going in and defining these projects. And then the best practices, again, we're seeing higher adoption rates. Companies are trying to stay away from customizing the software. I think the old mentality was, we are doing, the company is doing what makes us unique and what makes us best in the industry or tops in the industry, and we need the software to adapt to our processes. And there is certainly still a flavor of that, but companies are certainly more willing to adopt best practices from a financial standpoint, whether it be the AP process, the AR process, and then from the hire to retire from HCM. Groups are certainly seeing benefit in adopting these best practices out of the box. And then a lot of the vendors have the why not mentality. So as we're going through our evaluations, we have many conversations with the vendors, and the vendors, especially when you get into the pre-implementation planning and really trying to define the scope, there's a lot of discussions that go back and forth of why can you not adopt these out-of-the-box processes. Really what they do is they really put up a standard best practice process, and you have discussions of where your company may differ, and then why do you differ, and can you possibly adopt that new standard best practice. So there's a lot of discussion that goes around the pre-planning and the design phase of these applications. So trying to figure out which ERP system, which vendor meets your business strategy, we see again here that our clients are prioritizing functional areas. So groups that are larger organizations and enterprises, they may have more of a focus on HCM. We see a lot of these startup companies, these high-tech companies, Silicon Valley, whatnot, East Coast, that are more SaaS model-based product themselves. And they are getting there by recruiting and retaining very talented people. So for those organizations, from a human capital management perspective, that's actually just as important, if not more important than the back-end ERP system, is the ability to really recruit, retain these higher-end resources. From a product lifecycle management, that's what the PLM is here. Our groups are often assessing PLM functionality. All too often, mid-sized companies think that they need a full product lifecycle management application or a full product information manager. And when you peel back the onion of what they really need and what they do today, a lot of these ERP systems are able to handle most of that functionality, if not even more, right out of the box. So again, here, understanding what the vendors have to offer for a PLM for future phases is important, but it may not be the driver. Same thing goes with supply chain management and enterprise asset management. A lot of our companies are focused on, digitizing the supply chain and really having vendors talk to vendors, and same with customers as well, and just become more digital and leveraging technology to really optimize that supply chain. So some of our groups, that's the biggest, return on investment. Some of the groups, they choose to really get the ERP system in and stable before they really attempt to optimize that supply chain. And then from an enterprise asset management, depending on which ERP you're going to be looking at, which vendor, most likely all the large vendors have these EAMs as a separate application, very functional, very complex, which leads to larger or longer duration of implementation. Often our clients are seeing that there's a combination of ERP and maybe some maintenance management niche applications that could meet their needs and meet their needs for the short-term future. So again, it's important to assess and understand where each of these vendors play in these areas and what type of functionality that they have, and then going to the single platform preference, being database agnostic. Some of these different systems are not going to be talking to each other as seamlessly as our customers would anticipate. So that's another level of evaluation there. And then one of the biggest things that we see with our clients and that we hear from our surveys is the vendor cultural fit. So most of our groups are really looking for a true partnership with the multi-billion-dollar companies that are working with SAP, Oracle, INFOR, and Microsoft. They may not have all the functionality that are needed, and they may have to do some development. So our clients are looking for a partnership in order to really keep on the radar, keep their focus on what that customization, what that product extension, what that development may look like, and their development teams are really talking to each other from a business standpoint of what they need. And then some of the smaller groups that are still buying these applications, obviously they're going to rely on the direct vendor themselves or the channel partner to implement these. And you want to make sure that you have a good cultural fit between your service or your implementation team and the vendor or the channel partner service team. You want to make sure personalities match and you really, overall really line up with what that vendor looks like now and how they're going to behave in the future. This is a snapshot of the initiatives that are included in digital strategy from our surveys as well. And you can see we've got it broken down per vendor here. And then across the bottom, we actually have, the application or the business area, the function. So we start at warehouse management. We go through human capital, enterprise management. You can see there's some product information, lifecycle management as well. In there. ERP obviously stands out as the biggest initiative for any of our clients that are looking to evaluate these vendors. And then you can see, depending on what vendor, whether it be CRM and or enterprise asset management, kind of varies per vendor of what we're looking at. And again, we talked about Oracle having more of the CRM focus. And then from an INFOR standpoint, a lot of focus on the enterprise asset management as well. For example, these groups from INFOR, they may already have an INFOR ERP, and they're looking to implement the EAM because that's going to add the most value to their organization at this moment in time. We have other initiatives such as the manufacturing execution system, so the data that comes from the manufacturing floor, and then the transportation management as well. We've certainly seen some initiatives there. So looking at your engagement team and internal versus external resources, this is one of the most common pain points that we see from our customers, and it's a very common request. All of our directors and project managers are well versed in giving our clients the ability to really break down what internal resources, what resources at a client are truly going to be needed. Each of the vendors has, they're fairly transparent in what they think, and they all have metrics on the amount of time per subject matter expert or per project manager, and then also related to what phase of the project. But I think that's where Panorama brings a lot of differentiation with our experience from evaluation and implementation side. We really know what it really truly takes from a subject matter, a functional lead. What is their time during evaluation? It could be up to 70% at times. They still have their day job to do, obviously, so we need to get a proper balance of that. When you go into design and the build stages of the implementation, those subject matter experts, those functional leads are going to go, they're going to be upwards of 90 to 100% during some of those stages, and then they're going to drop down to 30 to 40% during some of those weeks or months of implementation. So it's very critical to define and set those expectations of what your people plan is going to be. And you also, obviously need to backfill those resources. And then possibly, depending on what vendor you're looking at, you may need to hire additional resources, whether it be an experienced PM with that specific software, or you may be hiring more IT people in order to become more self-sufficient on a perpetual license model. Really just depends on what the situation is, but there's a lot of value add that our team offers there in understanding what the internal resource allocation here. So you can see the INFOR customers had to use the use of most internal resources, and then Microsoft was the most external resources, and I think that we covered the reasons for that. I'll just take a few questions as we end here if they come in. And in conclusion, obviously SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, and INFOR are still really the biggest four players in the industry. Some of them have gotten there through acquisition, and then some of them, are SAP and Oracle certainly have always had their enterprise type applications and continue to develop that as well. Each of the vendors has their strengths and weaknesses and what the trade-offs here. It's important to understand that. It's very, when we're going through requirements gathering and going through the evaluation phase, very rarely do we actually see showstoppers, at that point down the evaluation phase of why an application cannot work for a group. Really, it's more setting the expectation of what needs to be designed and how it needs to be designed, and also by whom there. And then need to consider the client challenges and understand how the software will align with the organizational goals. Again, going back to developing the strategy, having a digital strategy, a clear strategy before you go into these projects is always beneficial. And then organizations implementing the new technology, are likely to succeed if they take a step back and properly align the strategy with the execution. So again, here, defining what the requirements are, defining what the future is, where are we going to be in the market space? Do we want to do more B2C? Are we still looking to increase our B2B coverage? Things like that all come into play. As we wrap up here, just wanted to make sure, again, here, visit the website and take advantage of the 1 hour free consulting with the Panorama contacts. Usually always very valuable to the groups that take advantage of that. And then our Director of Business Development is Laura Florence, and please jot down her information. Feel free to contact her after you visited the website or contact her directly. Laura is formerly one of the consultants here in the service delivery, so she really knows the Panorama process end to end and is an excellent resource, excellent leader of the BD team for us. So one of the questions is relating around Tier 1 versus Tier 2 and really what makes a vendor at the enterprise level versus the mid-market. And yeah, there's certainly some misconceptions here when you're labeling it. We have to be careful on who we label Tier 1 and Tier 2. Really what we look at are, you take it back a step and you look at the organization that you're in today, and what we see is organizations that are 750 million and above. I always like to put it at about $1 billion and above is really a tier one type enterprise. It's not always the type of, the revenue number. We have clients that are $1 billion plus, and they're very, very simple business model. We have clients that are 500 million that are very, very complex. So it's a combination of what the organization looks like from a revenue standpoint, from an employee standpoint, and from a complexity standpoint. At the tier one level, each of these vendors has applications that are geared for large organizations, that are geared to manage true enterprises. So you have to consider that. And then most of these vendors also have an application that is geared for the mid-market. We really position the mid-market, tier two, as companies that are anywhere from 50 million up to that 750 million mark. Again, here it's the complexity. It's not necessarily just the revenue. We have a $9 billion plus company that has one of the largest transactions amount, and you're talking from a global standpoint, thousands of transactions per minute are possible. So that one, even though they're could be straightforward, just the complexity of the amount of data that needs to be crunched and go back and forth in a real-time manner, that really leads to a tier one type need. Now, the other question coming in is around, any disruptors or up and coming, and there are certainly a handful of ERP systems and ERP vendors that are up and coming. A couple that come to mind. One is IFS. IFS is a kind of a London-based, more of a European company that is getting some great traction in North America. They have recently hired many resources from SAP, including a new CEO, who have a vision to take the company to the next level. So IFS is really looking to get more enterprise type clients. Right now, their focus is on about the $250 million organization. They play in the manufacturing, distribution, and EAM space, so they don't go across, all industries. They have more of a focus. But they are certainly, having an influx of investment and continue to have and improve their user interface, their user experience. So that's one vendor. And then one of the other ones that we see is Workday. Workday, we've got ex-Oracle folks. Workday is born in the cloud. It's really an enterprise leading application for HCM, human capital management, but they continue to gain market share and continue to develop the product from a financial standpoint. They can do some project management. They will continue to develop their professional services and their project management ability as well. So I think from a standpoint, I think IFS and Workday are two of the up and coming vendors. You have people like Salesforce. Salesforce.com has always been a leader in the SaaS model for CRM. Their field services is becoming more mature. Their call center type functionality is becoming more mature. And then you have Financial Force on the back end there, which, kind of helps them complete an end-to-end platform. There's certainly another small handful of vendors that are making their way and getting more investment and whatnot. They may be acquired by one of these big guys or not. But those are kind of the two that really stick out as emerging and upcoming vendors. And with that, again, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Looking forward to the opportunity to speak in the future. Thank you.